All right. Well, I have to thank the organizers and many of the presenters today for teeing up my presentation very nicely. Programming is beautiful, from register to the origin of the Powell implosive, Katuic, or we're going to hit all these things. So, all right. So the Katuic languages are mostly register languages. So I'll say little about that given the expert introduction we all had this morning. But the origins of Katuic register are currently we model them as being separate innovations after Proto Katuic, and Proto Katuic being not a register language. And so we have figured out various conditioning environments that led to the modern registers in Katuic languages. So that's nice. That's how we model it. However, there are at least 3 reasons or suspicious facts, inconvenient facts about Katuic that we could stand to address. And some of those are there are some cross-linguistic parallels in the distribution of register in Katuic languages that as they relate back to Proto-Katuic vowels. So could Proto-Katuic vowels have had some kind of register specification that would account for that? Another issue is Proto-Katuic has too many vowels. This is an old problem that we don't really know how to solve. So could those new vowels have been conditioned by some kind of register contrast in Proto-Katuic? And Proto-Katuic has too few voiced stops, some very suspicious looking D-voice stops, and some of them occur with some of those vowels that are innovative. All of this is very suspicious. So what I want to do here is sort of review how we think we got modern register in Katuic languages in a non-registral Proto-Katuic hypothesis. So that is to say, all the register contrasts are innovations today. And then I'll present those 3 lingering issues I just mentioned and propose some possible solutions to them. First off, just want to continue the love for GEHRMANN, and I just want to point out that he figured out most of this stuff in '82, but we're still working on it, the details. But off of barely over 100 lexical correspondences, so pretty excellent paper, 1982. So thanks to GEHRMANN, and so the Katuic languages, if you don't know them, they're spoken in sort of southern Laos and surrounding areas, as you can see on the map on the left. And it's not a very big diverse language family. So there's just a few subgroups that are colored there. So for register, just to recap, if you've forgotten since this morning, it's a phonological property of many mainland Southeast Asian languages. Typically a binary contrast, and it draws on this suite of naturally code-varying phonetic cues, which again we were introduced to earlier, so I won't dwell on it, but high register associated with various things. We're focusing sort of on the vowel quality today with my talk, so high register is associated with more open vowels and low register with closer vowels. Okay. Yeah, again, we've already kind of seen this, so I'll keep moving. Right, so in Katuic, onset phonation leads to register in at least one language or one variety of the Kui group of languages called Suai in southern Laos. So in that case, onset phonation is the only historical factor that's cognate with register in modern language. Then we have 2 languages, Baka and Ta'oi, and they have a strange register contrast, which I have referred to as a pseudo-register because it's not the normal way we do it, it's the opposite way. So instead of register triggering vowel height alterations and innovations, we have original vowel height contrast developing into register, and I'll show an example of that in a minute. But so Baka and Ta'oi are 2 of our best examples of that we have. And then we have these other languages that combine conditioning from onset phonation and historical vowel height in the distribution of register in the modern languages. So vowel height and onset phonation are our main historical conditioning environments. So just to briefly schematize this, onset phonation contrast from Proto Katuic like that will typically become reorganized into a register contrast, which we could transcribe like that if you like. And then in the more mature register languages, if they go the Chimera route, where the other only the vowel heights cues are maintained, then we might get a lowering of the high register vowel, and the low register vowel might stay the same. Okay. And for the other way, if we've got a original vowel height difference, it can be reanalyzed as register over time if the close vowel develops high register features and the A vowel, the non-close vowel, develops low register features. So again, it's a different mechanism than the onset phonation one, and not one that's well understood yet, but there you have it. Okay, so as an example, then we have the Cree language, Vedic language, north of Katuic, but it shows you each vowel, and it has like a different realization in high and low register. You get lowering of the close vowels in red and high register, maintenance in low register, and the opposite at the bottom, like we saw this morning, where the low register vowels like to raise, while the high register ones like to stay the same. And this is throughout register languages in the region. So a quick example from Brew, the Katuic language. Then we have 4 words here from Proto Brew that have da main syllables, but 2 are in high register, 2 are in low register. You see they have various points of origin, which is common for Katuic, making things very difficult sometimes. But notice all the diphthongization of in the low register down here. This is the normal thing. Low register likes to raise, right? High register likes to lower, but if it's an it can't lower. So guta and gata remain basically the same. All right, and so to take register genesis via vowel height, this other way of doing it. We'll take an example from Da'oi, where Proto-Katuic close and mid-monophthongs conditioned the low register, and everything else conditioned the high register. And then there were various vowel quality shifts downstream from that, which brought vowels that previously were on different levels together, and then they maintained their original register specification, leading to the birth of register pairs like what we normally find from onset voicing. So if register genesis via onset phonation goes in this direction, where the low register leads us to closer vowels and the high register leads us to more open vowels, register genesis via vowel height works the opposite way, where closer vowels lead us to low register and more open vowels lead us to high register. All right, so I don't want to dwell on this, but just so you kind of see how it works. Yeah, the close and mid vowels of Proto Katuic give us low register vowels in Proto Da'oi as it's reconstructed, and indeed in modern Da'oi. And meanwhile, the other ones give us high register. Okay, so that's sort of how it works over time. And when we compare the register outcomes of vowels in Da'oi, and we can to Proto Katuic, this is a Proto Katuic vowel reconstruction, we see that it actually stratifies nicely into the closer vowels and the more open vowels. And I will stress the reconstruction is not based on that fact. The reconstruction already existed, and then we got good Da'oi data, and it worked beautifully. So that was a good day. When I figured that out. Okay, So if register is all over Katuic and quick to inverse, is Katuic a registered language? Almost definitely not. I think everything I just described is this non-registral Proto-Katuic hypothesis, which is my hypothesis, the position I take. However, there are some good reasons to at least entertain a registral Proto-Katuic, so that's what we'll do now. As I said at the beginning, three lingering problems. Proto-Katuic has too many vowels, Proto-Katuic has too few voiced stops, and we have these parallel register distribution anomalies, which are related to vowel height. Okay. All right, the too many vowels problem. We've seen this in other languages, right? So I quote Thurgood here. For a Jamic language, Haroy has too many vowels. So if you compare Proto-Jamic to Haroy, you see extra vowels. And the solution to that problem is Haroy is a register language that underwent a register split in its vowel system, and voila. Now, for Austroasiatic language, Proto-Katuic has too many vowels. Not quite as striking, but it is too many vowels. And so Paul and I concur on that, as you can see, just slight differences in how we transcribe them. And pay attention especially to the diphthongs, the top number there. That's where Katuic shines, in the diphthongs. So, yeah, just to put a point on that. These are the red are the innovative diphthongs, as I will call them for the rest of the time here. In Proto-Katuic, as I mentioned, we don't really have an answer for where they came from yet. So, work in progress. Okay, problem 2, Proto-Katuic has too few voice stops. If we, at the top there is a comparison of the 3 stop voicing series of Proto-Austroasiatic. You see that the voiced versus implosive contrast is maintained only in some branches. So we can look through those branches and see how many voice stops they have and in what environments we find them. And so if we look at Proto-Katuic here, I say there are fewer voiced stops than implosive stops, right? Which is unusual. It's also true of Palaunic, but it is unusual. And also, there are more voice stops in clusters than in pre-vocalic position. That is to say, when the voice stop is before like a medial, like a bra or something like that, that's usually where you find them. And we actually find very few in immediately pre-vocalic position. Right, and so it gets even worse though, because most of those ones that we find in pre-vocalic position, they often have very clear parallel in either Khmer or Jamic. And we've talked about the borrowing that Katuic does. It does a lot of borrowing over time. So are these immediately pre-vocalic voice stops only in loanwords then? What if they were? Say they were. What would that mean? Well, that would mean we would have an almost complementary distribution in Proto-Katuic, where the greens would be the inherited Austroasiatic onsets primarily, and the reds would be loans or irregular developments. So what I propose is that the implosives, ba and da, and that there were only 2 in Proto-Austroasiatic, ba and da, and that they would have been unchanged in pre-vocalic position, and they were only found in pre-vocalic position. That bears out across all the family, actually, for the old ones, not for innovative ones. And then the voice stops, ba, da, da, they would be unchanged in clusters. But when they were immediately before vowel, as in not the onset of a cluster, they would have behaved differently. So they would have devoiced if they were ba or da, as examples, many examples suggest. But they would have remained voiced in the cluster. And then the palatal one, well, it seems to become implosive when in pre-vocalic position. But remains voiced when it's the onset of a cluster. So that's my explanation for the Proto Katuic glottalized palatal stop. And the gut seems to have not been affected by any of this, strangely, but I'm not gonna get into that here. So there are lots of very compelling examples of these, we'll call them devoicers, right? Stops that should probably be voiced, or at least could probably be voiced in Proto Katuic based on external comparisons. And this attempts us, and the examples here are even more interesting. They're often found with these innovative diphthongs, the ones that I showed at the beginning, the too many vowels thing, which is really tempting then us to tie these two things together, right? It's to say that, we have devoicing of voice stops and it's triggering the diphthongizations. Okay, and we definitely don't have time to look at the examples in detail, but they'll be on the PowerPoint. But this explanation actually doesn't work because there are lots of other words that have those two diphthongs in particular. And there's no reason to suspect their onsets were ever devoiced or anything like that. So it's a much broader problem than that. The two other novel diphthongs that there's no examples of words at all where devoicing could possibly explain it that I could find. And so while it's an interesting interesting correlation there, it can't be the only explanation for these extra diphthongs. So yeah, it does have too many vowels and too few voice stops, but I don't think these two issues are directly related. Basically, I couldn't find the evidence to support that. Okay, and the third problem is this parallel register distribution across Katuic. Let's just get right into it. So I already showed you how the OI is the OI register outcomes well stratified in the Proto Katuic reconstruction. So if it's red, the Proto Katuic vowel led to high register, and OI, if it's blue, it led to low register. So we're seeing what we would expect to see with closer vowels versus more open vowels. That's great. So does that happen in other languages then? How about Bokal? Well, if we trace what happens with Bokal, it doesn't work as neatly, but there are some things we recognize, like the close monophthongs are associated with low register. The open monophthongs are associated with low red, the open monophthongs are associated with high register, as we would expect. Yeah, but otherwise we get some chaos, right? It's not well stratified. So my explanation for that, and I've talked about this before, is that Bokal did this later after a lot of other vowel changes had already happened. So it doesn't line up with Proto Katuic, which is bad for a registral Katuic hypothesis. And I'm almost out of time, so I'll just do this quickly. But basically, in Grian and Gru, two other Katuic languages, we have these anomalies in the distribution of register that are related to vowel height, where most of the time register is determined by the voicing of the onsets, but in some contexts, the vowel height has an effect on it, skewing it one way or the other. Okay. So for Korean, it's that the open vowels, they're always what do I say? They're always in high register if they're in this middle series of onsets. Yeah. So if we're going to look for correlations with the Proto Katuic, we don't get much information out of that. That's not very helpful. And again, Korean register genesis is way later than Proto Katuic, so we might expect it. Okay, so Korean doesn't help us. Ru has 4 patterns, and I'll just go ahead and show you that we do find some things that we recognize. If it's blue, it means we've got significant skewing towards low register in modern Ru. So we do get that for the close vowels. And we also do get it for all of the innovative diphthongs, which is very interesting, but yeah, I don't know how to explain it at this point. So if we compare what I just showed you, the only real patterns that emerge are that closed vowels are associated with low register, open vowels are associated with high register, and everything else gets a little variable. So basically, we get no good evidence for any kind of Proto Katuic register out of that. You know, it's that can be better explained by the natural phonetic relationship between closed vowels and low register and open vowels and high register. So yeah, so Proto Katuic has too many vowels. It looks like we have various sources for these, but we cannot tie the innovative diphthongs to a register development process at this time. There's just no evidence to really support it. Too few voice stops. Clearly that happens along the pattern I showed, but it's not the explanation for the innovative diphthongs, so it's also not a good argument for registral Proto Katuic. And the parallel register distributions can be explained. They're too messy to be a real signal, and they can be explained by phonetics. So these facts are facts I've talked about. They may be suggestive of a registral Proto Katuic, but they don't tell a cohesive story. They don't work together, and so the non-registral hypothesis remains far stronger. Thanks.